Hello? All right. I guess we're live. All right. Well, we are not YouTubers, so no wonder, you don't hear such a big crowd over here. But I guess what we are educators who believe a lot in modding. So this panel is about using mods for teaching. We'll start with the introduction.
Hi, I'm Doreen, and I work for the Mozilla Foundation as community engagement. I'm actually a volunteer there, and I donate my time to the greater cause. I specifically work with the youth track in embedding them into everything that we do at Mozilla.
Awesome. My name is Arun Gupta. My day job is Red Hat. I work for Red Hat, but I also run a nonprofit back in the US called as DevOps for Kids. As a nonprofit, we do technology workshops all around the world for STEM technology, and Minecraft modding is typically one of the biggest and the most hit workshops for us. So that's what brings me here.
Hi, I'm Justin, and I work with Youth Digital, and we teach kids how to create with technology.
Hi, I'm Luke. I work for a PHP company called IronCube. We do a lot of community outreach stuff, and that's where we use modding to get kids into programming as a kickstart point.
All right. So the format we were thinking is, we have some questions that we want to answer ourselves, and by all means, we encourage interactive participation from everybody. So we'll answer those questions to begin with, and then you will definitely have a chance to ask questions to us as well. So very first question goes back to Doreen then.
I started sort of looking at modding because I have a 7-year-old, and at the time she was 5. She was sort of starting to be really interested in Minecraft, and it became a passion that I couldn't control. So as a social engineer, what I wanted to do was to find out what it was all about and how I could leverage it so that I could share what I cared with her in a world that she would understand. Because if I just told her, well, I care about this, in what way is it meaningful to her kind of thing? So that's how I got engaged in modding.
All right. Well, my son came to me about 2.5 years ago that Dad, my jar is broken. I was like, how do you know what a jar is? It's like, I've been a Java engineer all my life, and how do you know what a jar is? And so he said, you know what, Minecraft, written in Java. I said, oh, that blocky game, that starchy game that you play all the time, that's written in Java. So the bulb clicks. I said, let's take a look at it. I fixed the problem. And then he says, by the way, the game of Minecraft can be extended where you can actually write new mods. So 2012 Christmas is where we spent our time looking at how to write a first mod. And since then, it's been a mind-blowing journey. So that's sort of my involvement with modding.
When I was a kid, I really wanted to make my own video games, but there were very few resources out there. And so I had to eventually, like a lot of people here, teach myself. And when we got out of school, we decided we wanted to create a resource for kids to learn how to create all sorts of things, games, apps, etc. And a lot of our students were interested in modding, and so we took that on and created a course that helps kids learn how to mod and learn Java specifically with Minecraft.
Like I mentioned earlier, I do community events for the company I work for. At those events, it's trying to get kids into programming with an exciting way. Minecraft's a really relevant topic. I mean, you could touch on HTML, but it's a snooze fest. I've got no formal IT training. I'm a music graduate. So when I was looking at programming when I was younger, I used to play this old school MMO game called Tibia. It's like horrible sprite game. It was ace though, and me and my friends started hacking with that, changing character names, spawning different stuff, and it was kind of like a backwards way into looking at programming. And being able to give that experience to another generation is really cool.
All right. Well, I guess we'll start back with you in that case. What languages and platforms do you use when you are modding?
Sure. From a platform perspective, as a community, we use NetBeans extensively, which is kind of like Eclipse, but slightly different it's just a personal taste. And again, that's with Java, use Forge and MCP extensively to run our events and just do basic quick fixes and kids get their minds blown.
We use very similar tools. We've just started looking into an online IDE called CodeEnvy, and working with them to create a way so that our students can access their code from any machine connected to the internet.
All right, yeah, we have similar tools. We've been using Eclipse, NetBeans, really keeping it IDE agnostic. So the IDE that the kids want to use, it doesn't matter. Well, most of the times kids don't know what an IDE is. When kids come to our class, they don't even know sometimes what copy paste is. So we start with the basic fundamentals of Control C, Control V. We literally start from there. In that case, they don't care what IDE you tell them. You tell them it's a tool. And that's how you use it to edit Java source files. So we have used Eclipse, NetBeans, sometimes IntelliJ as well. So far, we have been focused primarily on Forge. There are a lot of other ways to do the modding, but Forge has been primarily client-side, a lot more effective. We're also looking at Sponge, and the other one is Spigot. So we've been looking at those options as well. So I guess there are a lot of different options on which you can get started with modding if you need to.
Again, very similar to what the guys are saying. The one thing is that for our toolkit that we created on Mozilla.org was basically we looked for something that was really robust, even if it wasn't in a wrapper. And we found that NetBeans was absolutely fantastic. It doesn't have any problems, and it just works out of the box. And on top of that, the NetBeans teams were really sort of awesome working with us to iron out any problems. And we found them to be really youth inclusive, which is not always the same with other IDEs out there. So we did actually try to talk to Eclipse, and they stonewalled us. We're not interested, you're too small, who are you? Kind of thing. Whereas NetBeans were like, yes, come on, we love the idea, we want to promote the community, we want kids to engage and come and join us. So I think that's sort of a really sort of important thing also to consider when you choose your tools and your IDEs type thing.
Right. I think I will go back to the point I said earlier. When you are starting to teach modding to your kids in your school, in your neighborhood, don't worry about which tool you pick. Most of the time kids don't know what tool to use. Just give them a tool. As long as you understand the quirks of it, it's okay. Although I would certainly second what Doreen said, NetBeans is definitely a lot more pleasing tool to use. Now, we all were talking about Java as a programming language that we use for modding. Typically, Java is associated with, it's an old language, it's a complex language, it's a lot of ceremony around the language by which you need to learn the language. The question to all the panelists, including myself, is, can modding, specifically if it's using Java as a programming language, is it the right medium for first introduction to programming as opposed to using like Scratch or Python or Ruby or some other language?
I would kind of answer that is, what is your poison? What you start with as a programming language is going to be your first love as you sort of carry on. And it's whatever the young people finds affinity with. Language is, on an abstracted level, it's procedural programming or it's object-oriented programming. And I think sort of focusing on frameworks is an important thing rather than the language per se. If they want to start with JavaScript and that's what floats their boat, then JavaScript it is. If it's Java, what we use Java for is teaching them how to remix code because it's really easy. You can glue stuff together and it works. There are so many languages out there that are absolutely amazing. England is awash with Python at the moment. Every school is going Python. Well, awesome. If that's what they want to teach in, hopefully eventually kids will transition to something that they love, or the way to look at programming language is use the right tool, use the right language for the project that you're going to build. And if it happens to be Java, then do it.
Now, one of the things with modding is, although it's primarily Java-based, so it does require that basic knowledge of Java, but that does not mean you need to understand that it's an object-oriented language, or need to understand the internals of compiler and how does all that work. And that's what those tools are for. They really hide those complexities, like whether you're using Eclipse or NetBeans or IntelliJ, any of the tool. To the kid, you need to tell, hey, by the way, you want to create a mod, and you want to make a bigger TNT explosion. So here is this variable, change it from 2 to 40, and it's going to make it bigger. Now, once they got their first bigger TNT explosion, you tell them, by the way, what you changed was an integer variable. Like we did a workshop here yesterday, 3 workshops, 90 minutes each, and the kids were doing simple chat items, wherein you type a message in the chat window, say potatoes, and it'll give you a stack of 64 potatoes. Now, kid got that mod working rather easily, and then you say, by the way, the text was a string variable. So my point being, you don't really have to introduce the fundamentals of Java over there, teach it to them in their way, in their language. They're already addicted to Minecraft, they're passionate about it. Let's leverage that knowledge, translate that, and teaching them some Java fundamentals. There is a JavaScript version as well by which you can mod Minecraft. So if JavaScript is the way they want to go, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I think what's really exciting about modding in particular is that there's already sort of this extensive knowledge that the kids have around all the different types of behaviors. And in that way, it's sort of like this library or framework for them to sort of cherry pick the different things that they want to add. So if they wanted to make a creature that could be tamed, they would know that an ocelot could be tamed, and they could go in and grab that code and use that. And maybe they also want it to be sheared, and then a sheep can be sheared. And they could grab that code, and just because they sort of have this understanding of the fundamental behaviors of each of the items, it's a lot easier for them to grasp onto new code and then to remix it into their own.
I think that's a very valuable point because kids already have that domain knowledge rather too well. So when they're looking at the code is sometimes very well written. They can look at the API, I know it's setting the location and the angles for an arrow, and they can understand the parameters. They don't need to know it's a parameter or a method call. To them, it's a more like English verbose text, which they can read and connect with it.
More just echoing what everyone else has said, really. Modding is probably one of the most relevant areas of programming you can look at with a kid for their first time at the moment. It's what they're really passionate about, and why move away from that area if you can take it and sort of sneak in education on the side. When they're so obsessed with it, they'll happily sit down for hours at a time looking at code and be just battling their way through it. And secretly, you're showing them programming, and they're just like, I've made a sweet mod, it's amazing, and their minds are blown. And at the same time, as Aaron was saying, then you say, this is a variable, or you've used this section of code to make arrows explode, and explosions seem to be pretty key in things.
All right. Well, one of the things we talk about all the time, whether you call it STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, or maths, or STEAM, with the art aspect added to it. STEM is a fundamental aspect all across the world. We need to educate our kids. It's the impetus is really upon us to educate them, to educate our next generation. But one of the questions I want to ask all the panelists is the STEM education that they're giving in school sufficient given the pace with which the technology is rising so fast?
This is a really hard one because schools, they're a framework, and trying to change school frameworks is near on impossible. But I think that if we sort of focus, bring back art into schools, that brings back meaning, a reason for engaging with technology beyond just the code. I think of sort of making as being a project, not just about the code. There is so much that sort of has to happen before you actually hit the code. And sort of bringing sort of art and creativity and just letting the kids have the freedom. The problem is that within our current system, we're not set up to do that. Teachers do not have the freedom for the morning sessions to say, okay, we're going to be creative now. They have 2 hours in the afternoon after lunchtime, where I think that there is great scope, and this is sort of a project that we're sort of bringing in with Mozilla Clubs, is after school. After school, you've got 2 whole hours, which is very easy to build a project. And in the after-school clubs, you can be creative because you're not having to comply to Ofsted. You're not having to comply to your board, to whatever sort of metrics that you have to follow. and encouraging sort of creative teachers to take on after-school clubs and say, okay, we're going to build something, and we're going to go through the process of building, not just the topic. That could make a huge impact.
Justin, I know you guys are very heavily involved in school clubs, so you want to talk about it next?
Yeah, sure. So I would just echo that statement that I think what's most exciting is building a project. And if you start with the question, what do you want to create, and hear their answer, as opposed to just starting with the question, hey, you should probably learn to code, I think it makes a big difference. And that's sort of, I think, a way a lot of us learned how to do it was by just making stuff. And so any way that you can frame it in the context of creating a website or an app or whatever the case may be, I think you sort of have that intrinsic motivator then behind it. And it's not too hard to change that, I don't think.
Personally for me, when I went through school, it was use Microsoft Office, A-star. So I didn't take GCSE IT. It was always a waste of time in that respect. Mainly because I'd already moved on to looking at websites and hacking games and stuff. I think at the moment there's been a good shift, but I don't think the scope of how gaming can be used in education has really been breached. There's still some people who go, it's gaming, how can it possibly be useful? And there was a great panel yesterday, I don't know if you saw it. There were schools from Hawaii where they were teaching Hawaiian history by building this boat, and it represented the history of Hawaii. And they asked the kids about it, and they then went out and did more research about the projects at home whilst building their own boats, which they wish they could feel. So it was using Minecraft as a great starting point to begin a conversation. And there's been other examples where they've moved on to social issues, such as, oh, you should ban TNT. Why should you ban it if you can use it responsibly? And it's another great starting point where you can actually move well outside of gaming, but just use it as like a kickstart area. And of course, then you can go into programming as well, but there's a much larger scope available.
Right, I mean, that's the trend we are seeing as well. You know, I mean, there are kids, you know, I mean, I have a friend whose son is super brilliant, you know, in computers, you know, 7th grader, super brilliant in computers, science, technology, but the moment it comes to history aspect, he completely zones out. So the parent tried talking to the teacher, you know what, how about you tell him how to build a Greek temple in Minecraft. Once he builds a Greek temple, then he can get a feel for it, and then he can show that to the class, and he'll be more engaged. But the teacher, unfortunately, you know, didn't get that point very well across. So I guess that's my point. You know, the STEM is there, you know, in parts and pieces, but it's still not so fundamentally integrated into the school curriculum where we can actually impact, where we say, you know what, everything we are doing is focused on STEM, where we, you know, very well integrated in there. And I think pretty much all of us in that sense are involved in some sense in our geographies, in our countries, in our regions to make that impact so that the STEM education in school is not fundamentally just like, you know, science, technology, engineering, maths, but it's really ingrained into the entire curriculum itself. Now, one of the things with modding, you know, we talked about it earlier, there are multiple platforms. There is Forge, which is client-side modding. There is Sponge, there is Spigot. There used to be Bucket, you know, which fell through DMCA. That was a big disaster in my opinion. Then there is Scriptcraft, which is also, you know, sort of another variation of how you do it. And everybody's coming with their own platform, which is good, which is healthy because there are 5 or 6 different varieties. You pick what is best for your need. But essentially, we have never heard anything from Mojang in terms of a formal modding API, where we can say everybody's going to converge towards it. So I guess my question, starting that side, is what is it that you would like Mojang to do to improve the overall modding experience?
Several years ago, there was rumors of an official API. That would be super sweet, because then we'd have a standardized form to look forward to. Bucket was that for a long time, but as DMCA sort of took that down, I was a bit disappointed. With the current APIs out there, there's quite a lot of bleed over. There's nice techniques for each, and it's more down to personal preference. So either of them are great to look at. Forge is the one I would look at, though. It's fantastic. It's a really good, easy starting point. But yeah, from Mojang itself, an official API would be great.
Yeah, I think that definitely would be awesome. And I think a lot of us, all of us here sort of owe those developers a lot just for supporting modding at all. And so I think for us, we would just love that continued support because it's really an incredible tool to teach the next generation of game designers and the next generation of coders with.
So let me ask the same question to Doreen, then I'll be a devil's advocate.
Well, I actually sort of agree with everything and can't sort of really add much to that conversation. Where I think Mojang could really sort of improve modding and community is by better documenting. By, I mean, today I sort of listened to block by block story, and it was like my jaw just fell to the floor. You know, why is young people not engaged in that other than at a localized level? I'm in conversation with OpenStreetMap, for instance, to bring some of the Minecrafters to do mad mopping. And you know, sort of the block by block people were sort of saying, oh, we only deal with government, we only deal with UN. And I was sort of feeling frustrated with that. And so if they don't want to deal with sort of the wider demographic, then at the very least, I would encourage them to share the projects so that other people could repeat them at a localized level, including what they're doing with modding maybe at a less technical level, so that your average mom and dad that are not geeks, you know, my family is a maker family. If I have a problem, I ask my husband. He's a software engineer, so I get all my answers answered. But your average mom that I engage with does not get that luxury. So dumbing it down a little bit in a sense so that everybody can understand it and not just at a higher level.
Right, I mean, in our experience, every time we do this modding workshop, you know, the fact that kid has to install JDK, NetBeans/Eclipse, then Forge, one of those options, as super confusing. You know, as super confusing. No matter how many emails we send, you know, our typical workshop is anywhere from 30 to 80 kids, 100 kids. No matter how many instructions we send, half the kids, I would say 70% of the kids show up, oh, I didn't get email, or I didn't install it, or I tried downloading JDK, I have a 64-bit machine and I installed 32-bit, and that's very normal. I think that's nothing to do with the kid or the parent, because there are, guess what, there are a lot more non-technical parents as opposed to technical parents like us. So I think definitely I want something from Mojang, I'll come to that in a second, but we have looked at different options, how we can simplify the entire getting started experience. In that sense, I like what Justin is doing, you know. You have Code Envy, which is running in the cloud. All you need is a browser, and you get ready to get started. Now, there are multiple modding APIs. So my question in that case is it too early to standardize modding API, or there is still more shaking that needs to happen in order for the competition to kind of emerge a little bit better?
I think that, again, it's coming back to what do you like? What do you want as a community? If you feed back into Mojang what you want, it's more likely to happen than if we four say anything to them. It's, you know, I don't have a preference in terms of APIs or standardization. I'm not even qualified to make that decision. Yeah, I'm not an engineer in terms of coding. I'm a social engineer, not a software engineer. And so it's sort of really important that the community itself adds to the conversation, to the wider discussion.
Well, the question is, you know, is it too early to standardize the modding API, or there is enough shaking that needs to happen still?
Sure. I think there was sort of move towards Bucket being a standardized one until the DMCA was just so widely used everywhere. Since that's gone, it's, I think, shaking about at the moment is the stage we're in. But, I mean, obviously with the code base still being developed, it may be still too early for an API, which is why we haven't seen it yet. But it would be nice to have one, I think. But.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's what I think as well. There are still Spigot, and there is Sponge, and there is Forge. I would like to echo what Doreen said, you know, simplify on the Mojang website that here are 3 options. There may be a new option coming up every month, but there is no way to figure out unless you're hanging out on the IRC or you know the people who are creating the project. So at least a page which is dedicated on a Mojang wiki where it says, here are the modding options, here is what you can do, here is their project website. Now the project is responsible for the documentation, but as a first start, at least you know what the options are.
I mean, possibly what Mojang could do is just put out an email to everybody or an open call, say, these are all the options, please vote. And then from that, sort of make it a dynamic voting system so that if more people vote for one API over another, it can cycle up and down type thing. So then it truly is a community effort based on what they want rather than what we think they want type thing.
Well, those are all the questions that we wanted to answer. If any of you are interested in teaching mods or use that as a medium to educate your kids, if you have any questions, by all means, use a #MINECON hashtag. That's what we are looking here. Or if you are live in the session here, feel free to let us know. We'll pass the mic around and ask the questions here. I'll pass it on.
Hi, just start off with a couple of statements. Firstly, Bucket was the API. Craft Bucket is what was taken down. So Spigot is now the official home of Bucket and Craft Bucket, and it's still usable as a programming API. It's also pretty much entirely server-based. So where there's this choice of modding APIs, it's more a case of, do you want to change behavior for multiplayer, or do you want to do something just in front of you for the kids to play with? Personally, I'm in the educational software business, so I see an awful lot of repetitive games that aren't that fun, unlike Minecraft. I've now forgotten what my question was. It's basically, what do you feel is the best way to actually get people involved in it when it's more the parents that don't have a clue what to do and are scared to get the kids started because they don't know how to carry on?
So the question was, how do we get the parents who are not involved into this, how do we get them started, the very first step?
I think it's a difficult question because if you're not, if you don't understand this place that is called coding, it's kind of scary. So I deal with quite a lot of parents that come to me and actually ask me, should I let my kid free on Minecraft? I mean, I've heard such things, and I'm saying, well, think of it as a project management tool. Teach them how to be project managers of their own work. And that sort of reassures the parents. I did that to a friend of mine, and she has a little 8-year-old, and she really was of two minds of whether to introduce him to Minecraft. But I know that she's a really good project manager herself, so I said, well, you know project managing, just teach him how to basically deal with his own projects so that he can break at a natural time, not when you tell him, which is in half an hour, because he'll get really frustrated. And if you can make it parent-centric, sort of talk to the parents on what they're interested in, how it's relevant to them, I found that to be the most successful way for longevity, rather than just taking part and then sort of not doing anything with it afterwards. If you don't have the cooperation of the parents, you're kind of screwed, to be honest. Yeah, it's you need tools, you need them to come to events like this, and that means parents, and we are the taxis. Literally.
I've found when running events, the parents, like the kids, will sit down in their own area, instantly start playing games, and the parents will be chatting over coffee and stuff, and that's when the interesting questions come along. Like, my kid watches YouTube all day, it's just Minecraft this, Minecraft that, they're playing Minecraft non-stop. And at that point is when you can show them at the end of the day, like, check out what your kid's done today just by being here. Not only is he being, or she, being really communicative, making new friends, they're also creating, sharing ideas. It's from a social point fantastic, but the parent then sees that and they can then see how Minecraft is usable in that way. I think it's just getting them in that arena where they can understand it's not them just glued in front of a screen endlessly. Having that opportunity to see them be creative is important.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of really great resources out there now that there didn't used to be. And I think even with a simple Google search, you can really start creating almost anything that you like. And so what we see a lot is the parents who are involved and take an active interest in the process, even if they have no technical skill, can usually get the students started. And
Yeah, I'll share a story. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing an event as part of Red Hat Summit, which is Red Hat's primary event back in Boston. And I was giving the workshop on Minecraft modding. After the workshop, a parent stood up and came and talked to me. This guy has been a Java programmer all his life as well. He said, Arun, when you started the workshop and you opened up NetBeans and you said, you know, I'm going to teach you Java coding with this, the parent said, I thought you were nuts. End of the workshop, you know, in half an hour, I think it's all about simplification of the process. You just need to tell them, you know, you copy paste this. Once you have done the copy paste, Java is a verbose language. Don't worry about the verbosity. Take that as a readability issue. You know, you can read the code and then you can copy paste it. Yesterday again, well, there were a lot of parents. Actually, majority of the parents in our workshop yesterday, about 200 kids, were non-technical. All of them pretty much were able to copy paste and get started and tell their parents. Parents would say, my kid is stuck. Kids say, no, mom, I'm ready. So I think it's all about getting that passion, is that getting that first kick. Once you have that, then hopefully that can get them started. Any other questions?
Are there any guides or resources you can recommend for getting kids started in modding? So I'm a comp sci graduate, but I've never played Minecraft. My son loves Minecraft and can't code. Coming together, there's the potential to do something, but where do you start?
Yeah, so the question is, where do the kids start if they want to get started with Minecraft modding? What are the resources over there? I think part of it actually comes back to the point I was saying. There is no official page. You know, if you Google on getting started with Minecraft modding, there are hordes of resources. Some of them are maybe even outdated. Well, I'll pitch my book. I wrote a book for O'Reilly, Minecraft Modding with Forge. I wrote that book with my son, who's 12 years old. That book is actually targeted at a 9-year-old kid. And they're selling the book here, I think, at Jinx store, or it's available at Amazon as well. So we wrote that book really for an 8 to 9-year-old kid with no prior programming experience. I met a couple of parents here who are using that book. They came over and they said, oh, yeah, that's the copy. So
I just built one.
a couple of parents came over to me and they said, you know, hey, we love this. Parent is absolutely non-coder. They said, you know, we can easily get started with it. You guys want to share any resources? I would recommend, you know, something that Youth Digital is doing. They do a lot of Minecraft modding resources as well.
Yeah, we've got, through the Mozilla portal, we've put up 2 teaching kits, which are open source under the Creative Commons licenses. Anybody is welcome to go find it, use it, hack it, add to it. Yeah, you know, we have a finite amount of time to create these things, so if you want to create some and put them on Mozilla, you're more than welcome. It's a community thing. So that would be found at teach.mozilla.org. And we have a number of other low and high-tech teaching kits.
First question is, what's your opinion on, obviously Minecraft are doing the education section over there, how that could be incorporated with modding? Do you think how long it could take to get them to start modding? Because I saw them doing like movements with fruit and stuff like that. Or do you think it should be more modding wise or more like programming wise and doing other sections?
I think as a first place to start, it's fantastic. Like the visual stuff in game with the computer craft and stuff is so cool. And the fact they can create floppies and like share them in game, and it's like, oh, check this out, I've made it, and they can instantly show their friend. It's way more exciting than, oh, check it out, some sweet code. But from a first standpoint, ace. And it'd be interesting to see how Microsoft is going to develop that further. I think it's got incredible legs, and it will really help get into schools, I think, as well, because they're a big name, rather than say myself to them, hey, I'd like to run some Minecraft events, and they're like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, I think it's great, all this stuff that is going on now with Minecraft and education, because kids just absolutely love it. So if you can use it, to educate in any way, I know they're doing science experiments, history experiments, some of the stuff you talked about earlier. It's just always great to sort of connect that. Because I think if a kid, makes a replica of the Titanic and builds it to scale, they're going to remember it a lot differently than if they just read about it or answered a question on a quiz. So.
I mean, the educational Minecraft stuff I think is absolutely amazing. I mean, what they do is phenomenal. And we actually sort of worked with the Minecraft EDU team last year. And they brought it to a bunch of teachers. Plugging. And the teachers actually got it, because what we did is we got them to walk through what the child was going to do. And having that personal experience expanded their bubble and their appreciation of this game. And also they really loved the freeze feature. I mean, that was the most favorite thing. But, anybody that does any kind of work in this space is to be applauded, because we desperately need more of it, not less.
Yeah, one of the workshops that we did, in February, March timeframe was for a local public school. The parents used to come to our Minecraft modding workshop, which we do in the Bay Area. The parents reached out, hey, we would like to do these workshops at our school. So we built like a 10-hour course curriculum. We did that as a 8-week course. Kids were literally coming. This is Minecraft, right? So they would show up 45 minutes on a regular school day before the regular school starts. These were elementary school kids. That means 4th and 5th grade. No programming experience, no Java experience. It took them about 5 or 6 classes when they could understand the code. In the 7th class I walked in, I said, I'm not going to tell you what this mod is. I just throw the code on the screen. I said, you read the code for me. In 7th class, for example, they were able to read the entire Java code and tell me what the mod is about. But that's pure Java programming, no visual. But I guess, depending upon the level, you can definitely start with visual first and then slowly transition them over to the programming side of it. You had part 2 question.
Sort of going back to the schools, why? With some teachers still being in a sort of older generation and not understanding computers and technology very well, how long do you think it will be till sort of new teachers, or obviously even children now that are getting taught, will be teaching that stuff and will be something that can be in the school all the time, like the STEM thing that you talked about before?
I would look at that question from a different direction. Yeah, we are all makers, irrespective of the media that we choose to make in. I noticed when my daughter was going through the early stages of primary school, one of her most creative phrases was junk modeling. They take cardboard and they put it in a sticker together, and that is hacking. Yeah. And so if we were to identify the teachers within the schools that are the natural hackers, that are the natural makers, and just remind them that the digital Minecraft is just an extension of what we do, not just a whole new thing that is overwhelming, I think we might have more success. It's about aptitude, it's about aligning people to something, not forcing them to accept something that they may not want to, because the resistance is really high. But if we remind them that actually, like Luke was saying, the history teacher loves history. So let's share it in Minecraft. One of the conversations I was having was with the library service. So we're having a big celebration of the Magna Carta in England, a fantastic 800-year celebration. Just imagine what that would have meant to young people if we'd actually done it in Minecraft instead of dragging our kids to the library.
I think that's right, and I think technology is constantly changing, but it's ultimately just a tool that we can use to make things. And since the first computers came out, and even beyond before that, humans have been creating things using tools. And so I think if you think of it more as a tool to make something as opposed to an end in itself, it becomes a lot less scary in a lot of ways. And you can use that to create almost anything. And so that's where we sort of start with our students, is around that idea of creating something, whatever that is, and then finding the appropriate technology is sort of the means to do that, I guess.
I think it's just a matter of time. More and more time, there's people who are exposed to gaming coming into the profession. So sooner or later it will happen. But in the meantime, there are those teachers who are really pushing for it. There's a guy from Plymouth yesterday. His school, he's got a server, he's got it up and running. Some teachers are really held back with bureaucracy. I know teachers myself personally, they're really pushing for this sort of stuff. But it's just getting ways around it. They want to have a safe place for their kids to be involved, but they can't have an open server for their kids to be on. They're like, oh, it's going to break the school network and it's going to be available. There are ways around it, but at the moment there's sort of just, it's not quite there. But as games become more accepted and gaming as a way to not have the same stigma it has done, it is changing. We're in that cultural shift now, I feel. And it's a great thing to see, and it is happening. But when? Soon, hopefully.
Well, hopefully we are at the tipping point, where we start seeing that more and more. I'll give you a personal experience. Now, we have done these workshops all around the world in different schools. In my son's school, we were trying to start a Minecraft modding club. It took us, 5 months, because the teacher thought, oh, you're going to install Minecraft, you're going to install JDK, you're going to install Eclipse, you're going to corrupt the systems. They went to the administration and everything, and ultimately, after 5 months, we gave up. We couldn't start a Minecraft modding club. So I agree with you, there are teachers of all the extremes, but I guess, as they say, the only constant is the change. So hopefully, this will be a lesson to them, and then next year they will evolve, and they can run a club over there. But it's a constant nudge that's coming from the kids, from the parents, from everybody. They're seeing it everywhere.
Just to follow on from that, we had to push around school systems quite regularly. So a colleague of mine, Kevin, he actually created a Linux distro where we actually just boot off USB sticks and just bypass the school system. It's very nice.
Actually, to sort of answer your question, my son took an online history class. It was a Minecraft-based class. So they read articles. It was about medieval history. So they read articles about how peasants lived. And then the kids went in the game and they each built a peasant house. And the teacher had a mod in the game so they could claim specific land so they couldn't affect each other's land and things like that. So that's just one example of how you can use it. It's not actually coding for the kids. It's just teaching them history. But that was an online-based class, so I think as you see more of those classes, you'll see more push from parents for it to happen in schools.
Any other questions?
You said you run a few classes in schools. Is it just in schools, or is it like social classes, like in youth clubs?
Normally it's an after-school club or something. I know Dorian's done some sessions in school with primary school level. The stuff I tend to do is more community-based, so we go into a hack space and run an event for free if we can, and just invite anyone who's in Minecraft. And normally it's the kids who drive that push for parents to come. The parents are like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it basically anywhere you can get a space and say Minecraft here, they will come. With schools, it's kind of difficult. It depends on the teachers and the specific heads. Some schools are really for it, and sometimes that's been down to they've got like a nephew or something they're like, oh, he's like Minecraft crazy. We should have this here. And I think it varies from place to place, but I think the push is sort of coming around now. I think it will be more widespread.
Do you go out and find the schools, or do people get in touch with you?
For us, it's been through word of mouth to some extent. Luckily, Dorian's been with her kids talking to schools, and other parents who have come to our events, their kids have told their parents, and they're then asking their schools, and then have come through to us saying, oh man, how do I get this at my place? And we're just like, oh, well, we'll help you set up your own club. And the idea for us would be we don't have the infrastructure to run it ourselves, but to give them the tools to be able to do it themselves, which is the best way to do it. If they can take ownership and say, right, we're going to do this history thing, or we want to look at this specific thing and adapt it this way, or just run a club where the kids are socializing on it. It really is, it's more just opening the door, I think, and teachers will appear and say, yes, this is a great idea.
I'd like to sort of add that one of the groups of people that I'm sort of starting to work with quite strongly are homeschooled, because they're not in school. And some of them are really sort of passionate about Minecraft, but there's also a group of parents that don't have the resources because they don't have access to schools. So that's one of the groups. I'm sort of currently creating 2 Mozilla clubs within the UK in Kent, which will be for homeschool children. And I'm training the parents to run it for themselves. I honestly can't run clubs all over the world, but the one thing that we can do is empower the parents, and especially their youngsters. So, you know, the mom says, oh, I don't know anything about Minecraft, I'm really scared. And I'm saying, well, it's not your job to know about Minecraft. You're the responsible adult, be it, and let your child do the Minecraft and do the servers, train mentors up, and that sort of creates a really sort of inclusive ecosystem, which you can then sort of shunt through DevOps. I mean, DevOps for Kids are in the UK as well. We have Mozilla Festival every year, which is what we consider radical participation. We don't talk to you like we're doing today. We actually get you engaged in projects. We ask your opinion, and we listen as well. Whether you're 13, just on Thursday I had a 13-year-old sort of say to the group, "Thank you for not treating me like a 13-year-old." And I was like, "Oh my God, you know, it's." Yeah, I don't know. Leaves me speechless.
Well, one of the things what we do also is, you know, as DevOps for Kids is a nonprofit, we not only, DevOps is a big professional developer conference, UK, France, Belgium, Poland, Morocco, and it's spreading around the world. So with each of the bigger DevOps conferences, we do this DevOps for Kids. We try to align up with that. Then we have started spreading to different corporate events now. So last year, for example, we did as part of OSCON and Java One and Silicon Valley Code Camp. This year, pretty much all the events are either doubling or tripling. This year, we are looking at Java One with about 450 kids. Not just Minecraft modding. That's going to be one of the popular ones, we know that, but a lot of other topics, so all broader STEAM. Other things that we are also doing, since Java is a primary language, look out what is a local Java user group in your neighborhood. So we work with the local jug leader. You know, I'm one of the jug leaders. I run the Silicon Valley jug. So we have created a train the trainer module, which you can just look at yourself on how do you want to deliver that course. You look at that module, and then you work with your jug leader, pull in the volunteers, and run it. Other things we also do is, as we were talking about, you know, parents come to us, run this at my corporate event. And corporates, you know, specifically in the Silicon Valley, they see this as a social event. Oh, I want to build a social community in our company. This is good for employee motivation and employee morale. So then they do a weekend of Minecraft modding for parents of the company. So lots of different ways by which you can mold this.
Thanks. I teach AP Computer Science in the United States, and that's taught in Java. So I've been curious about ways to kind of use both, you know, the fact that Minecraft's written in Java and get kids interested in programming it. But for me, being here at MineCon, I think the big eye-opener for me is this whole community around the game. I mean, you have YouTubers, you have this entire community around sharing what people have made. And I'm curious how we can create that community around modding for kids. I mean, I've taught kids in workshops, but it pretty much just stays in the workshop. You know, the kids don't go outside of that and share it out because I'm not even sure where they would go. So this concept of audience, how can we capture that? We've seen how powerful it is with Minecraft in general. How can we capture that for the modding community?
So one of the things, you know, we get this request all the time wherein a kid has, you know, done a workshop, they go back home, you know, it's typically a morning workshop, they go back home, and then the parent will send you a mail that afternoon or evening. You know what, my kid pulled in all the neighborhood kids and he showed them how to do modding. So, I mean, the fact that all other kids play and they get to mod gives them a bragging right. They feel pretty excited about it. Well, there are lots of different ways, and again, depending upon Forge, Spigot, you know, they all have their own repositories where the mods can possibly be shared. The challenge with that is, you know, somebody is using Git, some is using SVN, some is using a different code repository. So you're teaching more fundamental concepts to kids that way, that, oh, you know what, if you want to contribute the code, is not as simple as uploading the YouTube video, which is definitely a lot more seamless. So I guess to me, it's all about dumbing down that sharing process. You know, maybe you can create a mod, make a video and then say, here is my source code, somehow zip it up and upload it. So I think that needs to be simplified.
I was just going to follow on with the YouTube aspect. A great way is to sort of record the mods they've made, then upload them as your own channel, and they'll go and share their friends and stuff. It's a great way to get out what's been done. From an actual sharing perspective, if you're using something like Forge, that can then be implemented on a server and shared. But sort of finding that area, normally it'll be between their friends and stuff at first, but then sort of attracting others from outside the group it'll be word of mouth, I've found. But yeah, I would recommend YouTube because that's where everyone is. It's the place to be.
I have a question about
sorry.
engaging. Sorry. Hi. I run a very small 40 families large computing club where we use Minecraft quite effectively to teach kids. I'm a teacher myself. However, increasingly with the way education is heading, we find it very difficult to engage parents, and especially in technology, and actually to the point where occasionally we would send out briefs on when the next session is going to happen, and parents simply don't pick it up, so that their children miss out on the interesting events. Do you happen to know of any good practices or existing case studies of projects where parents of children involved in Minecraft for Education projects were effectively engaged?
So I work with a couple of schools locally to me, and I think the thing that's worked the best for me is actually having a personal relationship, as in I've grown that relationship over time with the school, so that anything that I do or promote, the school will basically include it in the book bag. That's the vehicle, at least in the UK. I don't know about the States or other places, but whenever sort of a notice goes out, it goes in the book bag of my child and I get it at home. We've tried digital, and digital doesn't always work because it's not necessarily the right tool for all parents. But having like a little paper slip that says this is going to happen, and getting the school to put it in the book bag, because that's the first thing the parent does when it gets home, is open the book bag to find anything that's sort of relevant. To answer another question earlier, because I wanted to say, in terms of progression, there is an issue with progression. The events are nearly like silos. You know, the kids come, they take part, and then nothing happens afterwards. The question has to be asked, why are we doing it if nothing happens afterwards, you know? And I think sort of community will play a huge part in this. And not wishing to sort of be too strong, but I think that the open source community is a really awesome place to go learn about how to be a coder. And, you know, from Red Hat, they have a sort of really good open source community. There's Ubuntu, there is Mozilla Firefox. Within sort of that track, we're starting a new project called Youth Mozilla, where we're going to be inviting young coders to come and basically cut their teeth on our small projects. And then we'll mentor them up the track. And there are other sort of large open source organizations that are sort of looking at this very sort of problem. We need more coders, but they need to be mentored. But sort of come back to your main question for Luke and Justin.
So one of the things, you know, as Doreen was saying, you know, that we have found effective exactly on the same lines. In US, there's typically this concept of a Wednesday envelope. You know, Wednesday, that envelope goes back, and parents are required to sign it and send it back on Thursday that they've seen all the documents. I guess the key point being you need to understand how parents are getting the information from school and get into that system itself. So something that we've also seen work effectively is if parents are sharing their email address and it happens to be a Gmail, we send them a calendar appointment that here is when the event is happening, so that at least it goes into their calendar.
I think I guess we're trying to tackle a bigger problem. We're talking about parents who actually don't open the school information either. So we're talking about parents who are generally not engaged in their children's education. And what is starting to happen in the UK is that schools struggle as well, which is why we work outside of the school system. And yes, I agree that the personal communication works, but that works with parents who care. I wonder, because what's happening with technology, I happen to work in social media. Occasionally, if you look at the functionality of tools, and Minecraft has a great potential, sometimes the way you do things encourages parents to get a little bit more involved. So for example, we require parents to stay in sessions. Even though they find it utterly boring, they have to stay. Otherwise, children cannot subscribe to the course. But that is kind of halfway there. They still don't read emails. So I'm looking for case studies of things where the way the underlying principles of a club work start to shift the mentality in parents from school is not going to do raising children for you. You actually have to participate in that process.
Participation is a really big ask of parents. I mean, you're one of them, because I saw your little one next to you. I'm one of them too, and I don't have time. This is the one thing that parents tell me. I don't have time to sit there. And at my club anyway, it's a judgment call. I don't insist parents stay. I recommend it. I do everything in my power to help them stay so that they understand the conversation. And what I did 2 months ago is I actually did a leaflet drop for the first time. I thought, you know, I've reached my digital users. Let's go low tech. Let's do a leaflet drop. And I found parents that would have never in a million years chosen to come to something like this. So sometimes you have to look low tech. You know, technology doesn't answer every question. If your user doesn't value technology, they might value books, and they're used to receiving leaflets in the post. And the interesting thing is when I asked the kid, how did you find out about us? They pulled out the leaflet and say, oh, I found out in the post, and I showed it to mommy. And I bugged mommy until mommy brought me here. So, you know, Minecraft has this power. It's called the pester factor. And supermarkets use it very effectively for sweets.
Well, I guess just putting the Minecraft logo on the sticker itself will help, so that the kids know, then it's going to be kids for them to push the parents, as opposed to asking the parents to drive the kids. Any other questions? All right, well, I guess that's a wrap then. Thank you very much.